Yes? Yeah.
There was a lot of explosions.
Oh, well,
Is that on record mode?
depending on your definition of awesome, that can be really awesome. All right. How many of you, when you think about doing this display board, that kind of excites you a little bit? Like, you think that's going to be fun?
No.
Alice is like, yeah. How many of you are like, I don't have a clue what to do. This is stressful. I just want to explode some stuff. Yes. Okay. By the time we get done in the next 15 or 20 minutes, you're going to have a better idea of what needs to go on your display board, how to organize your information, and this can be a really simple, really fun process for you. All right, you can sit down. You got the blood flowing to your brains. I'm going to be really hard to fill.
A blood to your brain is upside down.
Okay, do you guys know who Dr. Phil is?
Yes.
So, before Dr. Phil was TV famous, he was a lawyer, and he was actually a lawyer for Oprah. And he says that a weak case presented well is better than a strong case presented poorly. So you might not have the most exciting project, but if you can create a visual display that's really presented well, it's actually better than a really strong experiment or project with a poor display. Let me show you some examples.
Oh.
Why did you say oh, Ethan? What's wrong with that? Why did you get that reaction?
It's messy.
It is messy. So here's the thing about this Skittles. This is actually Skittles. It's kind of hard to tell. This, if you blow it up and you read some of the information that's on here, it's actually kind of cool. The experiment is talking about the color of the Skittles and what you usually get the most of in the bag. But because it's displayed so terribly, nobody knows how good the project is. Same down here. This is like really cool information, but it's just like someone just threw it on the board and hope it stuck, right? There's no organization, nothing to keep your eye. However, these two boards over here, like this makes you want to learn more, right? Do you have a question? About this?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Looks like potatoes.
It kind of does, right? And so this makes me want to stay and learn about your project because these two displays, to me, show that these students really cared about their project. And they took the time to make it look good so that me, as the reader or the judge, would be able to know what their project was about. This, to me, says I didn't really care, and so I didn't try very hard. This is actually just marker scribbled all over that board. And you guys aren't going to do that. I know you're not.
Now that looks like spray paint.
We have our.
So, what is the purpose of your display board? Does anybody know?
To show your results, your experiment, what it's all about.
Yeah, it's just a visual representation of your project or your experiment. Do you have a question?
No.
You stretching?
Kind of.
Okay, I'm just not sure. If you have a question, we'll answer questions. So you guys have worked really hard on your projects, and your display board is how people are going to know what you've been doing this whole time. Why create one? Well, we've already kind of talked about it. It's just an extension of your awesome project. And you guys have awesome projects, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes? I think you do. This, guys, this board right here, this is a giant invitation. Do you know what it's an invitation to?
Science.
Your science fair project party. Okay? So each one of you is going to have an invitation to a different party. This invites me. Jack, we'll use you as an example. Jack's display board is an invitation to me as the judge or the viewer to spend a little time at his science fair project party, right? And if his invitation is designed well and catches my eye and keeps my attention, I want to spend time at his party getting to know about his project. If like the one we looked at before, it's not a very good invitation, I probably just want to move on to the next party. And this is a way of communicating your information. And you guys, I know, because I've spent time with the other classes, have done a lot to gather information, and you really want to communicate it well. So for those of you who are like, this is stressful, Hayden, were you one of those who was like, this is stressing me out a little bit? Are you excited about this part?
The first one.
Stressed a little bit? So when you get stressed, I want you to remember to just kiss your project. Keep it simple, silly. When you're stressing out about it, just remember it's best to keep it white space. Does anybody know what I mean when I say white space? What do you think?
Space that doesn't have anything to put there.
That's exactly right. It's unmarked space in the design. And it's the space between elements. So if we look at my display up here, the white space is actually white, right? All of these places where there's nothing, it's what we call white space. It's also called negative space. But there's even white space in these copy elements, between paragraphs and between the lines. There's even white space here in my headlines between the letters. So white space is
Please
important
dismiss the Quiz Bowl team at this time.
for a couple of reasons. But how many of you cover
Meet at
your
the 3 doors, guys.
background with colored paper?
Wait,
All of us did besides Miley.
Well,
So the good news is your white space doesn't have to be white. What color's on yours, Cassidy?
Light blue.
Light blue. So your white space is going to be light blue on your background. All right. So don't be thinking just because you don't have white on your board that you don't have white space. Remember, it's just the space where there's nothing else. It can be any color. This is a design element that helps balance your board and organize your content. White space is something that people use outside of science fair display boards. We use it when we're designing websites, when we're designing magazines, books, newspapers, even when we're at home and maybe your parents are trying to figure out what to put on a wall. White space is a part of their design element. It improves the visual communication experience. So let me tell you a few reasons why it does that. First of all, it allows us a place for focus and attention. So because I have white space here, my eye is able to focus on the important aspects of your project, and it draws my attention in. So you can see this board has enough white space that I'm able to give enough attention to each part of the project. And that's what you want your viewer to do. You want him to know all of the different pieces of your project. It also helps make logical sense of the information. Remember that one that I showed you where it looked like they just kind of thrown everything up against the wall and hoped that it sticks? There's nothing real logical about that. And our brains don't like that. So when we see something like that that's just thrown up there, we just move on to the next thing because we want it to be logical and easy for the reader or the viewer. And it gives your mind breathing space. Doesn't that seem kind of weird to talk about breathing space for your mind? Well, think about it like this. When you guys go to vocal or you were just in band, you have rest in your music. Your rest is the breathing space in your composition. Because if you didn't have rest, it would just be a bunch of noise, right? Or just all jumbled together. Well, think of your white space like the rest of your display board. It gives the eye that breathing space. So let's talk about your title. Do you have any questions about white space? You understand that you need some on your board, right? You have a question?
Would white space be a good area to put like photos of your experiment?
Well, photos are a completely separate element. You want to have photos on your board, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But remember, white space is where you don't have an element. So see on my photos how I actually have white space around my photos? So those are two separate elements. And that'll make more sense, hopefully, as we move along.
I think
All right,
what
so
she's
let's
telling,
talk
I'm going to
about-
interrupt you real quick,
Go
Sarah. I
ahead.
think what she's telling you is you don't want to wallpaper everything on your board and
That's
cover up
correct.
every space that's on
'Cause
there.
I'm gonna do those corners.
Okay, so let's talk about a title. You want your title to be a few things. You want it to be attractive, catchy, easy to read, and match your theme. So let's talk about attractive. You know what attractive means?
Yes.
Cute. Cute? Maybe? Yeah. When you think, what? Handsome. It's easy on the eye, right? With something we like to look at. So you want to make sure that your title is something that people like to look at. It's catchy. This one's catchy. It says the water bottle craze. That kind of piques your interest, doesn't it? Makes you kind of curious what this is talking about. And it's easy to read. A good tip is to make sure that your title, that if you stood on the other side of the room, you could still read your title. That means that it's big enough, okay? A couple things I like about this. I love that the one word is a little bit different, a different font, and it's in blue, which matches the theme of the project because the project is about water. Now, Now, if we didn't have this right here, and all we had was the water bottle craze, we might not be real sure what the project is about, right? But we would know it's about a water bottle. Well, what they did was they just took their question and they put it here as a subtitle. So they used the same format, they just made it a little smaller, and it gives us a little more information. Does popular mean quality? So now we have a little bit of a better idea. You can do that with your question, or you can make it a separate part of your project. Let's talk about headlines. Does anybody know what the headlines are on my board?
They explain what they are. It shows you what part of your poster it is.
So what words on my board are the
Question,
hypothesis,
background,
material,
procedure.
You guys are right. All of those things that are in green up there are my headlines. Your headlines help your reader quickly identify the different pieces of my project. If you were to walk up to this display board, without question, you would know where to find the hypothesis, where to find the results, where to find my procedure, right? You would not have to think or work very hard. And that is exactly the experience you want to create. The font size of those headlines is smaller than the title on the board, but it's bigger than the copy. And when I say copy, I am talking about these pieces that have a lot of information in them. That's what we call copy. So your headline needs to be bigger than your copy, smaller than your title. It also needs to be easy to read, okay? There's a lot of really cool fonts on your computers, and that's awesome, but don't pick one that makes it really hard to read. You want it to be easy to read. You don't have to pick the same one that I picked. Pick something that fits with the theme of your project. Just make sure it's not too swirly or too close together and those kind of things. And then keep it consistent. Do you notice how in this example, all of my headlines are the same? They're the same font type. They're the same font size. All of them are consistent, and that's what you want to keep. You don't want to make one headline really big and one headline really small. When someone looks at this board, they know exactly which pieces are the headlines. Let's look at this example. Tell me what you notice about these headlines.
Too many pictures.
We're just talking about just the headlines.
They're like in the paper.
Okay, they're on the same sheet of paper. That's
They
okay.
are-
On the
they
right
are
side,
really
they get
big.
smaller.
They go like
They're
What
hard to
what do you
read.
say, Logan?
they're different sizes.
They're different sizes. Do you guys notice how this headline, it's the same font as this headline, but this headline is bigger. Smaller. This one is bigger than that one. So they're all the same font, and they all have the same design, right? They kind of have this wave to them, which is great. I love all of that. What I wish was a little different was that they were all the same size. One way that you can make sure they're all the same size is to remove them from your copy so that you can make these all consistently the same size. What do you notice about the headlines in relation to the title of this board?
They're different fonts.
They're different fonts. That's okay. Our title and our headlines don't have to be the same font.
It's hard to read.
The title can be a little hard to read. What might make that a little bit easier to read?
They
got a
bigger
different
than
font.
the rest of it.
Making it bigger, Cassidy. That's right. Look, this headline is almost as big, if not bigger, than this title. And they really had room on this board to make this title a little bit bigger. So you want to keep that in mind when you're doing things in relation to one another. Title should be the biggest. Headline should be the next biggest. All right, let's look at these headlines. What do you notice about these headlines?
They are all the same font.
Very good. All the same font. What else do you
They
notice?
are all the same size.
The title is small.
But
Yeah.
the title is smaller than the headlines, isn't it?
That headline's bigger than, kind of looks like it's bigger
Down
than
at
that
the
chart.
bottom, it doesn't have a headline.
Right. There's a headline that's missing. We don't know what that bottom piece of information is. You're the first one that's caught that. Good job. What?
The materials and the procedure is bigger, and the proposal and the hypothesis.
Yeah.
and the
So
graph
you guys are
are-
noticing something about the copy that we're going to talk about in just a second.
And the headlines are short and the. not
So
as big.
you guys are already picking up that we want all of the pieces that are similar to be consistent. And so what Michael is saying is that this copy right here